Okay, welcome back to Heritage HQ and our latest Heritage Live. Today's guest is marine biologist, naturalist and seabird guide extraordinaire Kate Sutherland. Kate has been studying and researching seabirds for more than 20 years and has just completed her master's investigating the foraging ecology of black-capped petrels on research and Dr. Stephen Emsley's lab. Both Kate and Dr. Steve joined us in the heart of Antarctica on our Ross Sea voyages earlier this year, studying the ecology and diet of Adelie penguins past and present, and the impact climate change is having on them. We are super excited to welcome Kate back as a lecturer and guide again next season. Welcome, Kate. Good to see you again, and thanks for joining us. It's fantastic to have you here today. And joining us again for the Southern Ocean sailing.
Yes, I'm so excited. Thank you so much for having me today to share a lot of my adventures from earlier this year with everyone, and also just to talk some more about seabirds. It is one of my favorite topics.
We are well aware of your deep love and admiration for the seabird. So if we could start, Kate and I will, and then if you guys have any questions, please feel free to fire them away on Facebook and we will come back to them. If we have time, I'm sure we'll have time. I hear Kate's a bit of a talker, so am I, so we could be in trouble here, folks. Okay, let's get started. Okay.
If not, I can always email people replies as well, so no worries.
Absolutely, yeah. So how did you get involved in the study and research of seabirds?
Well, it's actually kind of a funny story. When I was in my early 20s, I was attending community college, doing some field biology classes, and one of my friends had just finished a relationship and wanted to know how she could meet some men and go seabirding at the same, or go birding at the same time. And my advisor, my professor said, "Oh, go on a pelagic trip. There are no women on there. It's just a bunch of guys out on the ocean. You'll love it." So we did go to North Carolina, which was pictured in the last slide. I'm of course in the northern hemisphere. And then, yeah, there's a little arrow pointing to North Carolina. The pale blue you can see there is the continental shelf. So we went to Hatteras, North Carolina, and went offshore there. It's the closest place to the deep water on the east coast of the US. So also it coincides with the Gulf Stream, which is a very warm water current running offshore here, which is in the next slide. And there's also a colder water current that meets as well. So not only do we have deep water, which if you're a seabird person, you know, deep water is important for seabirds, but also current meetings and edges are also very important for the food resources that those birds are looking for. So Hatteras is a really important place for seabirds. So I moved here out in the ocean to live about 24 years ago, and I've been working with Brian Pattison for a company called Seabirding, taking people offshore to look at the seabirds that inhabit our waters and visit our waters. Some of them come all the way from the Southern Ocean. So this is a picture of me in the very early days, back in the early 2000s, collecting data and notes on some of those seabirding trips. And that has led to me also being involved with taking people to see different species of seabirds. So the next slide is me in Bermuda. I lead a tour to Bermuda every year to look at Bermuda petrels, which are related to the black-capped petrels I did my research on and are our signature seabird here in Hatteras, offshore from Hatteras. So I've gotten to do a lot of things over the years related to seabirds, and pretty much any way that I can get out to see them or study them, I will do it. So.
And what is it specifically about seabirds that has you so enamored of them?
Well, they're like little superheroes, you know, they are able to live very comfortably and make a living in this habitat that is totally inhospitable to us. You know, we go out offshore and it's incredibly rough and windy and everyone's holding on or they're seasick. And these birds just move with ease and they're able to find food there and spend their entire lives at sea. That's fascinating to me. And it's just never ending what you might discover if you spend enough time offshore.
Absolutely. So exploring the Southern Ocean then, one of the world's seabird capitals, that must have been heaven for you.
I'm still really kind of on a high from being there for 2 months and getting to go to New Zealand, which is basically the seabird capital of the world, and the source of a lot of the conservation that we see comes from New Zealand and Australia. The Southern Ocean is just the home to some really incredible species. So the beginning of our trip, we visited the Sub-Antarctic islands of New Zealand and one also from Australia, Macquarie Island. So this is just a quick image giving you an idea what those islands look like, that bathymetry, the underwater topography that gives us such rich feeding grounds there, and offers homes to a number of seabirds. This expedition going to the Ross Sea visits these Subantarctic islands on the way down and back. So it's a really wonderful introduction to the Southern Ocean. It was for me anyhow, and having some really incredible seabird experts aboard the Heritage Adventure was also really helpful. So,
including yourself.
Well, I had to learn, there's a lot to learn for me. You can read a lot in books and you can study everything you want, but there's something about seabirds. You really have to learn how they move and how they fly to really get a feel for identifying a lot of those individuals at sea. So I had Matt and Niall and Dr. John, they all helped me a lot to get as much knowledge as I could soak up over 2 months at sea.
Yeah, absolutely. And, our teams are the best. So there's so much knowledge to take in when you're on board with our guys. So tell us about your experiences in the Subantarctic Islands. They're kind of like a warm-up to Antarctica, right?
They are, and they have incredible diversity. And one of the first things that you notice, we go to the snares, are the snares crested penguins, which you can see here in this picture. They have very powerful legs. So they're really good at hopping around on the rocks, but also ejecting themselves from the water to be able to land on these cliff faces. And you're able to get pretty up close and personal, observing them from the zodiacs. So you're not really close, but if you have good cameras and good lenses, like a lot of us do now, you can capture images like this of these awesome penguins as they're, roiling around in this in the surf that looks incredibly rough, but they are perfectly fine because they're made for it.
Yes, they're here we've got a picture of them navigating the formidable penguin.
Slide. Yeah, the penguin slide. So I love this picture because you can see, on the left-hand side, there's one where you can see the shadow. So, like it is made it really high and it's going to just slap down on that rock and you can see all the others up at the top. They've already navigated this. I was blown away that these birds were so adept at navigating some of the islands that we had there, some of the terrain. So they're super cool.
They're purpose built for it. And this is the only place in the world that you'll see these particular penguins as well.
Yes, and it's a great time of year because they're nesting. Otherwise, they would be at sea. A lot of seabirds only come to land to reproduce themselves. So these tours go at a perfect time to really be able to understand how many seabird species are utilizing these islands. Here are some Buller's albatrosses. They also are nesting there on the snares. So you see them in large numbers right offshore. You're not allowed to land on the snares, so it's strictly touring by zodiac. It's an incredible experience. The albatrosses, I'm still blown away by the albatrosses that I encountered on this trip.
You do get to see a few, don't you? But then you also get to see the yellow-eyed penguin. So this guy is a New Zealand native, but has a more healthier population in the Subantarctic Islands, right?
That's exactly right. Matt, who was our seabirder on the January trip, spends a lot of time working with yellow-eyed penguins, and he's based in Stewart Island. So he was able to give us a lot of information about their population, which is it's dwindling in New Zealand proper, but they really do have a stronghold there in the Auckland Islands, and specifically Enderby, which is where we were able to go ashore and do some hiking. Sometimes you'll catch glimpses of these awesome little forest dwellers. So they're actually nesting kind of up in the woods versus in colonial nests like we'll see later for some of the Antarctic penguins.
I think, and this is on Enderby Island, and there is a penguin thoroughfare, so we have to give way to the penguins because these are quite timid, these penguins, unlike other birds.
They are. Yeah, so there's penguin highways. They have their own highways there, which is quite nice. So, oh goodness, the light-mantled sooty albatrosses, the Auckland Islands was the first place that we got to see them nesting. There were actually a couple of pairs on one of the cliff faces. These albatrosses were with us the farthest south. So they actually, we saw them down to the ice, which was really fascinating. And they are very beautiful creatures. So
they most definitely are. But then the shag is also quite a nice bird.
They are quite nice. And every island, just about every island has its own endemic species. So this would be the Auckland Island shag, and you can see a very nice, healthy population there. And one of the images that I captured with my telephoto lens there on our long walk at Enderby. It's just amazing, the wildlife that you encounter and really, how unconcerned they are with you. Oh, the hookers. These are, yes, the New Zealand sea lion. The Auckland Islands, I think from reading up on some of the information I had from Heritage, is 95% of the young that are produced for this species are produced there on the Auckland Islands. So it's a very important place for them to reproduce. And these are some of the young ones, which you do get to see. They're very interesting. There's a lot of sexual dimorphism in this species. So the females, they're the smaller pale animals that you can see there. And there's one male. They'll have harems of 20 to 25 females. And then you can see some of the smaller pups there as well. It's really exciting to get to see them on the beaches when you pull up. But you also have some of the, there are also some younger males wandering around, so you have to be pretty careful and keep an eye out on your walks not to disturb them. We had a young one who was curious about us and kind of came up, and then another one came from the side, and they had their own little discussion as we kind of continued on our walk. But it's just really incredible to get to see all of these animals in these incredible natural habitats there on the subs.
Yeah, we'll just go back to this slide here on Sandy Bay on Enderby Island. This is quite a surreal moment when you're sitting up on the banks overlooking the beach, littered with just all of this activity. There's life, there's birth, there's sex, there's violence. It's just all happening right there. You're almost expecting David Attenborough to chime in with some commentary.
You hear him, you can hear him in your head, I promise. So, but yeah, it's really just an amazing place. So on the February trip, I got to do the long walk around Enderby, which was quite nice, but gave me the opportunity to see, I found a lot of seabird carcasses littered about, which was fascinating to me. So I have a lot of photos of bills and feathers, trying to figure out what species I found there. But there are so many different seabirds nesting there on the Auckland Islands, on Auckland Island and the surrounding islands, that I have a long list.
So these they would just be natural causes or predated by a larger species?
Yes, they could be predated. There are subantarctic skuas that make their home there and are reproducing as well during the breeding season. And they will predate a lot of these birds, specifically coming and going at night to try to avoid that type of predation. What we have here is a skua pellet. So when the skuas are eating birds, they just eat the whole bird, and then they will regurgitate the non-digestible portions. This was an incredible find because you can see there's a prion bill and a leg. And it could be a Fulmar prion. I'm not positive. I have a few people I've asked about it, and most of them say it's too hard to tell. So, but I was really excited to find that with all the bones. You know, you could spend a lot of time dissecting pellets like that and seeing how many different species they might have eaten. And yeah,
absolutely. So would this be a younger bird, or is this an adult?
You mean would the pellet or the prion?
The bird that was consumed, was it younger, or would it have been full aged? I know the skua are quite big and they almost have like a snake thing going on when they open their beaks quite wide.
They do. It would be hard to tell probably from this picture, but I imagine that they take a lot of both. I imagine they take a lot of young birds. Some of these birds are probably in burrows, so they're underground. It would be a little bit harder for them to get in there and take a young bird, but if they're fledging, it could be a little bit easier. So it might depend on the time of year, and I'm just hypothesizing, but it might depend on the time of year, how many adults versus young birds they might be taking. But Macquarie Island. So this was an incredible place. It's the first place we were really inundated with penguins, where we were able to kind of go ashore. And here we have a royal penguin. There are I think I read like 3 million pairs there on Macquarie Island. And they're very loud, and they smell a lot too. So but they're so curious.
But this is a place where Macquarie Island is the only place that you'll see the royal penguin, because this is where they breed. So.
Right. That's exactly right. And things like this. So that was a picture of Matt, who was our seabird extraordinaire expert on the January trip. You just stop for a minute sometimes. These birds are so curious about you that they'll just approach you. So we have rules about how close we can approach them, but they don't have any rules about us, as you can see. So they're super curious. And yes, always ready for a nice photo op. So elephant. Yes, yeah. So this is a young elephant seal. Elephant seals are also breeding there on Macquarie Island. They get to be incredibly huge. They're also very deep divers. Some of you may have heard of northern elephant seals if you're in the northern hemisphere, and then we have the southern elephant seals down in the southern hemisphere. They are, well, incredibly deep divers, like I mentioned, but also the males can get to be over 8,000 pounds or 3,600 kilograms. So they're quite large. Here's another young one. I think this image is by Samuel Blanc, who's a polar expert. Our logistics manager on both cruises is quite incredible, and an amazing photographer. I love this image.
What a shot.
It's an incredible shot. So, and I'm not sure where he was to get that, if he was in a Zodiac or on a, but yeah, Macquarie is a very special place.
And then of course you've got your kings.
The king penguins. They are also, it's still, when I think about being there, it's still kind of overwhelming because it's hard to take in everything that you're seeing at the same time. There's so many pieces and so many animals and just the scenery. And there you can see the Heritage Adventure in the background. But yeah, it's just an amazing place. So
and the king colonies, particularly in Lusitania Bay, are just you can't see the beach. It's just standing room only, and there's just thousands upon hundreds of thousands of king penguins.
Yes,
It's
at
really,
varying ages as well. So they, I've read that, they will sometimes reproduce opportunistically. You'll get, if an individual failed, they might try again later. So you might have birds at different stages. There's almost always king penguins there. So these light-mantled sooty albatrosses again. This is the first place that I got to hear them calling, was on Macquarie. They have a very interesting call. It sounds kind of like a cat. I don't think that I could, I don't know that I can try that just off the bat. I didn't practice, but they do these incredible synchronous flights, the pairs around their nesting colony, and just breathtaking. So I'm pretty sure this is from an image from Campbell Island, which was visited on the way back up. We only made it there for the February trip last year, but that's also, it's home to one of the largest colonies of southern royal albatrosses. So while I don't know that I could pick a favorite Sub-Antarctic island.
Yeah, I won't put the pressure on for a favorite Subantarctic island, but was there a particular wildlife encounter that has stayed with you in the best possible?
These the southern royal albatrosses were mind-blowing. I don't know that I was really prepared for their size, and then just for their really fascinating behavior. So you can see a lot of times the younger individuals will return to nesting colonies to kind of practice before they're ready to actually pair off and breed with another individual. So
yeah, you just cut out there a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, they're involved. So you did cut out there a little bit, but these juveniles are sort of dating, really, aren't they? It's that gamming that they do.
Yes, yes. And I really just wasn't prepared for how incredible that was to observe, and just what amazing creatures they are. And then the landscape is just, I mean, the flora is also incredible. Definitely an amazing place.
So yeah, when you talk to that sensory overload, it literally is a sensory overload. There's so much to see, experience. You mentioned the fragrance of the penguins. Yeah, there's lots of noise. It's busy, but then it can be quiet as well. This beautiful shot.
Yes, and the smell of the ocean. Yeah, amazing.
So that's the Subantarctic Islands. After that, you have a few sea days. So during that time, that's good opportunity for looking at seabirds and some pelagic birding.
Yes. So I think I was maybe out on the deck all the time during these periods with my camera and my binoculars. I took my binoculars to all of the meals. I didn't want to miss anything. So remember the black-cap petrels that we have here and the Bermuda petrel that I take people to see in Bermuda are in the genus Pterodroma, which means winged runner. These white-headed petrels are in that same genus. So getting to see some other Pterodroma petrels in the Southern Ocean was truly just, it was mind-blowing. So I got to see these. I saw mottled petrels, soft plumage petrel, which had been on my list. This is the underside of the white-headed petrel. I trained all of the crew on the bridge to recognize. I taught them a lot of seabirds so they could tell me what I missed when I had to step out. And they white-headed petrel, they all learned very well. So I think we have slides of some other birds that they also learned well. This is an Antarctic petrel, which we saw as we got closer to the Ross Sea. Sometimes we would see hundreds of them and they would come really close to the boat. And then the snow petrels, I was speechless, but I would get so excited every time we saw one, that people would just say, oh, it's the snow petrel lady. She's excited about the snow petrels. But they are really incredibly exciting. They nest in Antarctica, very far inland. And there's not very much known about either of those species, the Antarctic petrels or the snow petrels. We're kind of limited in our knowledge because of how far they are inland, or how far they are from, how far they nest from where we could get to them, I guess makes more sense, but. I think. Oh, there we go. I was like, I think I lost you for a second. So another super exciting thing about the sea days was getting to see these birds foraging naturally. So this is an Antarctic petrel with some type of isopod, but I spent a lot of time photographing the seabirds around us as we were moving, trying to get pictures of what they were feeding on. And here's a wandering albatross, one of the wanderer types, the New Zealand wanderer. It was really incredible to get to see some of these on our trips to and from the Ross Sea area, from Antarctica, to and from Antarctica. So a really spectacular finding on the February trip was a sooty albatross, pictured here, related to the light-mantled sooty albatross. But I was able to spot it and identify it quickly, and then put out a call on the loudspeaker. Everyone on the boat got to see this bird who wanted to see it. So that was really incredibly rewarding for all the hours and hours of sea watching I did while we were there.
But obviously worthwhile. There's, even on a sea day, there's never a dull moment.
Never. No, there isn't really. There's always something to see.
And there's also some fantastic opportunities to do some cetacean.
You cut out for just a second there. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, there are a lot of cetaceans as well during that trip. We actually saw a few more in February as we approached the Macquarie Islands. This is an hourglass dolphin. I was really excited to see those. And then the long-finned pilot whales, there were a lot of those around as well. Obviously, pretty close to the ship for me to be able to get some nice images with my large lens. Also a lot of humpback whales. So.
Yeah, and you've also studied beaked whales, in particular the Cuvier's beaked whale, the king of the deep dive. What have you learnt about these guys?
So I work for a lab here in North Carolina, Andy Reid's lab at Duke Marine Lab. And this is an image of a Cuvier's beaked whale surfacing. They spend very little time on the surface, but you can see where it has some teeth there at the end of the lower jaw. Only the males have teeth that erupt. And so it's hard to tell some of these species apart. The Cuvier's males are fairly easy because they're quite pale, but it can be a challenge. So in the next slide, I have a picture of a Gervais beaked whale, which is a different genus from the Cuvier's beaked whale, but also lives offshore here from North Carolina. And you can see the tooth is kind of partway down the jaw on that individual. So number one, you have to have really nice conditions and see them well. They're not very big. They're not on the surface very long. And the males are the ones that will tell you what species you're looking at. So they're an incredibly challenging group of whales. But this team, Dr. Reid's team at Duke Marine Lab, has been studying them. And the next slide has this is a picture of the back of a male Cuvier's beaked whale. You can see it has a lot of scars, and the dorsal fin has some nicks in the back. We can use all of those to be able to identify these whales to individuals. So we have a catalog of individuals, and we also tag them to study their dive behavior. So they are on the surface less than they're under the surface. So you could call them surfacers instead of divers. Like we would be divers, spending most of our time on the surface. This is a nice image by Dr. Will Chaffee showing the depths to which some of these whales dive. So you can see the depth there on the left-hand side in meters, and then the time across the bottom. So they do some smaller, shallower dives and then much deeper dives, but they've been known to dive as deep as 3,272 meters, which is incredible. And then Dr. Reed was also with the team that recorded a 222-minute dive, which is another record. So longer than the southern elephant seals.
Wow.
So they get the title. Yeah. Here's a picture of Dr. Reed, who's the leader of our lab, Dr. Andy Reed, putting a tag on a short-finned pilot whale from a small boat. So we're out there way offshore where these whales are in the very deep depths, trying to tag them.
Wow.
Yeah, you can see it's quite small. Trying to tag them when they're on the surface for a really short period of time. And we're putting what's called a D tag on them. So that's a digital acoustic recording tag. You can see it there on the side of that Cuvier's beaked whale. This is a whale that we tagged last year. What that tag will do is basically record everything that goes on while it's on, but we have to get the tag back to get that data. Yeah, so it's like the size of my hand, and you put it on the whale, and it goes, you tell it like, we want you to get rid of the suction at 24 hours. So it'll be on the whale for 24 hours, and then it'll detach and come to the surface, and you have to find it. So
and
that's
to try and retrieve it.
Yes, it has a VHF beacon, so we can search. We're out there on boats and we're searching for it. We should kind of know where it's going to come up, because a lot of these whales have satellite tags, so that we can keep tabs on them. But yes, it's really amazing, really amazing.
Wow, that is incredible.
Yeah, so this water is like 26 to 30 degrees Celsius, very hot. Blue water of the Gulf Stream, and now we're going to transit.
Yeah. So you arrive in the Ross Sea. This is your first voyage into the heart of Antarctica, as we like to call it. What were some of your first thoughts when you arrived?
Well, I was definitely overwhelmed by the ice and the chill, but it was really a very nice transition to go down by ship and get to go through all of the steps as you reach Antarctica and the Ross Sea. I definitely, I was very excited to be there, but at the same time, I was really nervous, because our very first stop in the Ross Sea area on the continent of Antarctica, I was going to have to help Dr. Steve with his research. So I kind of had a lot of things going on at the same time that very first day that we arrived. Amazing.
And arriving into Antarctica is particularly, arriving into Antarctica, like for the first time, and particularly down into the Ross Sea, we're really in the heart of it, is quite an emotional experience, really.
Yes. I mean, it's and it's everything that you have normally around you, and anything that you think about that is just these typical day-to-day things that we have in our lives, you can really just leave all of that, because what's around you is so incredible and massive and just overwhelming that everything else just kind of falls away, and you're just existing in this really amazing habitat.
Oh, absolutely. I 100% agree with you there. It's a full immersion into almost like another world. So you mentioned you were thinking about your research that you were doing with Dr. Steve. So this was on Adelie penguins. What was the reason that you're doing Adelie penguin colonies?
Okay, so first of all, there were a few different things that we were collecting. So this image is actually from our very first stop at Cape Adare. So the first time that I was on the continent, and this is Dr. Steve showing me what I needed to do. So we got ashore and he said, okay, we want to find penguin chicks that look kind of like this. We want them to be a certain age, a certain size, and we want them to be pretty clean so we don't have to do a lot of work. So skuas will predate these penguin chicks. So we were looking for the tibiotarsi, which is the largest bone in the body, to have enough for doing stable isotope analysis. We also were collecting eggshells and surface bones and prey items like krill that were along the beach. And then also we were collecting, yes, those are some of the surface bones. So they would be a little bit older and give us some different information than what we were getting from those chicks of the year. And then this is, oh my gosh, the crew on the Heritage Adventure were so incredible helping us collect surface water. So we had this nice little cylinder that we could drop overboard from the bridge and collect water enough to fill a bucket. And then we were pumping that surface water to collect the phytoplankton. So we had little filters that we would use to collect that phytoplankton. Here's a great image of George. He's working really hard on these hand pumps that we had there on the bridge, pumping that seawater through so we could collect the phytoplankton and get an idea what is in different areas there as we transited the Ross Sea.
And why was the focus on Adelies specifically?
So the reason that Adelie penguins are so important is, well, they basically make their own soil. So they like pebbles. So this is a great picture of one with a pebble. They build little pebble mounds for their nests to put their eggs in. And when they do that, they basically are existing in the same place. You can see all this pink in the background. They need ice-free terrain to nest. So they're building these nests, they're defecating in those areas. So you have a lot of penguin guano, a lot of penguins. There are 338,000 pairs nesting here at Cape Adare. And they're able to, the soil accretes, and in that soil you find feathers and bones, mummies, eggshells, and they're building layers. So there are biological records basically from these Adelie penguins in the Ross Sea area going back 45,000 years. So Steve has been working in the Ross Sea for a long time and has been able to date a lot of the colonies. Here's an example of one of our volunteers collecting krill along the shoreline there at Cape Adare. But so we had a lot of different people helping us with this.
Gonna say,
but
some of these citizen science initiatives.
Yes. So we're able to use all of these pieces to kind of put together an idea of how long Adelie penguins have been nesting in different areas in the Ross Sea. And there's Annalise Russ. She has some bags of eggshells for me on Foyne Island. I got to work pretty closely with our citizen scientists, and Steve took the time to go explore around on some different places. So this is myself and my team with a very large collection of penguin carcasses. We had taken the tibiotarsi from one tibiotarsi from each carcass to take back, and we did 20 surface bones for each one to be able to kind of investigate the foraging ecology of these birds using stable isotope analysis.
Excellent. And have there been any findings from these samples?
So yes, actually, this is an image of, again, the Cape Adare colony. Dr. Steve had learned that there were some exposed bones on the back terrace. So he and one of our volunteers, Elizabeth, went back there. He collected some samples and he did find, so I think I had mentioned Cape Adare is a fairly new colony. It's been there for about 2,000 years, according to radiocarbon dating of samples he's taken there before. Those samples from the back cliff at Cape Adare dated to between 600 and 1400 years old. So that is right in keeping with the age of that colony. So pretty fascinating. So this is a picture of Foyne Island, which is part of the Possession Island group. So it's very close to Possession Island. Another really cool thing about expedition travel and using a vessel like this for research, we couldn't get on Possession Island this day, but you can look around and say, oh, we might be able to do this island over here. So Aaron Russ was our expedition leader, and we went to Foyne Island, and Steve had never been there before. So all of the samples he collected are basically new to our knowledge about Adelie penguins in this area. So everything that we got there is pretty fascinating. What he's already found from the samples that he excavated, this is an image of one of the colonies from further up on the hill there on Foyne Island. Those samples dated, most of them about 1,000 years ago, but there's one that dated back to 4,600 years ago. So we'll need to do more research to figure out if those were sporadic occupations or if they've been there for all of that time. So hopefully we'll be able to get back there and do some more sampling.
What sort of work will you be doing this time around?
So we'll be continuing the same type of work that we did last year. This is a slide from Dr. Steve or Dr. Emsley that shows us some of the different penguin colonies there in the Ross Sea area. We'll be doing more sampling like we did last time, so collecting those same bone types and also prey remains. And then we'll be continuing the surface sampling for phytoplankton as we're moving through a lot of those areas. One place we didn't get to go either in January or February earlier this year was Terra Nova Bay. So we have hopes that we'll be able to get into Terra Nova Bay and do some collecting there this upcoming season.
And you'll probably be looking for some volunteers as well from fellow guests.
Yes, yes.
What a great thing to add on to your adventure.
It really is. Everyone who helped us was really excited, even the ones who were just pumping the water.
So you have recently just knocked off your master's. What's next for you?
Well, I'm excited to go back to the Ross Sea area and excited to be with Heritage again. I'm also super excited to work with Steve on this Adelie Penguin project that he has going. But basically, I enjoy being offshore. So I'm always looking for ways to get out there. So I work for a company that takes people offshore. So for the next couple of weeks, I'll be taking day trips and showing people seabirds offshore from North Carolina. And I'll travel a little bit later this year to get offshore in some other places. And then in December, I'll be back in New Zealand. And I'm excited to get offshore again there.
We're looking forward to having you back, and obviously some similarities with the seabirds that you love. You spend your time out offshore as well.
Yeah.
Now, on this voyage, you had quite an incredible encounter with emperor penguins. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it was on the February trip when we got down to McMurdo. We kind of parked in the ice there, and we had seen some emperor penguins, but we hadn't really been able to get very close. And we thought, well, if we just spend some time here, maybe we'll have a few come by. And there were over 50, probably close to 60 individuals that came quite close to the ship, close enough for me to take these images from the ship with my little zoom lens. But
yes, Very good
They,
news.
they were calling to each other and going through some of their courtship rituals. So you'll see here the two that are together. A lot of times they'll have their head down. Samuel Blanc, who was with us on both trips last year and will be with us again, spent a lot of time, knows a lot about emperor penguins. And so we were really lucky to have him to kind of explain some of the rituals they're going through, where they're kind of looking for their mate for that season.
Yes. Samuel lived down at the French base de Monteville studying emperor penguins over winters. So
he did. And
his knowledge is exceptional.
Yes, and his he gave us a really wonderful presentation about his time there, and just even that I would say is worth coming. But no, he's a really wonderful, knowledgeable person. So this was an incredible image to capture. And I think Samuel, all of us, of course, all of the expedition staff were like glued to these penguins for hours. And we also had some of the
equal distance.
Glued to the side of the ship. But there were some type C orcas or killer whales that had some breathing holes along the edge of the new ice there at McMurdo. And here's one that's surfacing in one of those breathing holes. And there were some emperors right next to it, unimpressed, as you can see. They were very unimpressed.
Like everyone else.
Oh, this is a picture that well, it's very special to me because here in North Carolina, we see Wilson storm petrels. So here on the left, you can see a Wilson storm petrel. They nest in Antarctica. I actually got to go to some of the places they're nesting, which was really special for me. So to capture an image of a young, you can see this is a young emperor penguin on the right and a Wilson storm petrel on the left. I was like over the moon to see those two species together. So I was excited to see Wilson storm petrels, really just everywhere. It's really amazing. So
this is a photo of Samuel's as well, which was from another voyage. We just put in there. And so what were some of the other highlights from your time in Antarctica?
This is another species that we see regularly offshore in North Carolina, the South Polar skua. They also go to the Northern Hemisphere. So seeing them, in the ice and where they live was another incredible highlight. This is a great picture. It's not mine, but it's such a great picture because pardon?
It's Kathy Finch's.
Yes, it's really perfect. Kathy was with us in February. But the skuas, every penguin colony, every Adelie penguin colony has its resident skuas who are either nesting in the middle of the colony or up a little bit higher in a different location, but they regularly prey on the chicks of the Adelie penguins, which made the work of Steve and I much easier because all we had to do was find the penguin, the skua colony where they were nesting, and most of the chicks that we wanted to collect were going to be right there, already cleaned for us. So they really helped us a lot with our research. We need to add them to the acknowledgements, I think.
Fortunately, in this instance, we have a happy ending as the chick back to the clutch, and we see the skua putting down its wings in defeat.
Yeah. And this is a great picture as well because you can see there are some chicks that still have their kind of down feathers, the brown ones. And then the other chicks that are there, they're actually a year old. So they have a white throat. And that's how you can tell them apart from the adult Adelie penguins. It's a pretty cool little ID feature.
Yeah.
This is in February we passed. That's the colony again.
Amazing landscapes
at Cape Adair. And you can see kind of the penguins down at the bottom. It looks really kind of dirty. It's where that nice pink ornithogenic soil that the penguins have created is. But yeah, just being there with you have 24-hour daylight. And then in February, you start to get these kind of dusky times. And this was one of those times as we were heading back. A Ross seal. So Steve has been going to the Ross Sea for a very long time. And this is a species that he had never seen. And we did have a lot of seals on the January voyage. And so it was incredibly exciting to get to see this one individual. They're very hard to study because they're typically on ice floes. They're not really, some species will haul out in different places or be associated with actual exposed land, but not the Ross seal. So there's not a whole lot known about them, and it's a really special thing to get to encounter this species. So it's a couple of images I took on that January trip. And this is back to the Emperor Penguin Day. Getting to see the type C orcas or killer whales down there near McMurdo was really spectacular. Both trips we had really good encounters with them, and I'm hoping to put together kind of like an ID guide, a catalog of some of the different individuals for us to have moving into the future. So, the whole point of this journey is in the steps of Scott and Shackleton, or Shackleton and Scott, and getting to see the habitations or the huts. I don't know that I was really prepared for how that would impact me, because I was really focused on the seabirds and really focused on the life we would see going to these places and being in these areas where these men survived truly inhospitable conditions. It was really incredible. So, and we were able to visit all of the historic huts, on both of the journeys that we made down there.
And I guess at this point, we do need to give a shout out to the Antarctic Heritage Trust here in Christchurch, New Zealand, who have done an incredible job maintaining these facilities for us to enjoy.
Yes. The amount of work is just, it's incredible. We did get to see some of the videos and documentaries about, how much has gone into preserving these areas for future generations to visit and see.
Yeah, you almost feel like you're trespassing at some points, and they may actually come back at any time and catch you in their house.
Yeah, it's really amazing. Oh, and the people.
Yes.
I really enjoyed the people. We had a really great time. We had such a great team on both expeditions. And this is Agnes, Samuel's wife. We went out to look at an emperor penguin on the January trip, and they were way in the distance. And then one just sidled right up to us, and everyone went, "Oh my gosh." But we were all so excited to get out there. She had kind of like fallen a little bit, and her binoculars were full of snow.
You're still trying to make them work though.
Yes, trying to figure out what's going wrong here. Yeah. And again, just the scenery, it was breathtaking. Yes. So, and he did a lot of work helping to restore and maintain a lot of those buildings there in Antarctica. So that was really wonderful as well. And those are the birders. So from the January trip, I had a nice team to spend a lot of time with me out on deck. I don't think we.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your enthusiasm and passion for the Southern Ocean and its wildlife, and sharing some of the research you've been doing as well. Now, do you have time for some questions?
Of course.
Okay, so we have a question from Fran Solly. She's asking, which book would you recommend pre-trip?
Oh, that's a really good question. What I did is I had Heritage sent us kind of like a not a dossier, but like an information, a
Information.
collection of information about all of the different places that we were going to visit, with everything I needed. But I do, and it's in the back right now, but there is a complete guide to Antarctic wildlife by Hadoram Shirhai that does cover a lot of not only the different wildlife that you'll see, but also a number of sections on the Ross Sea area, all of Antarctica basically, and also the Sub-Antarctic islands on all sides. I did have that with me on the trip, and I had a really good seabird book, a handbook to seabirds of the world. So that also I would recommend if you're interested in seabirds. But yes, complete guide to Antarctic wildlife is a nice volume to have.
Okay, awesome. And we have another question. Wandering albatross are very low in numbers at Macquarie Island.
Are they very low in number? We didn't see any wandering albatrosses when we were at Macquarie. We did see some coming to and from. I know they are nesting there on Macquarie.
Yeah, his question was, do you have any theories on why the wandering albatross numbers are very low on Macquarie Island?
I don't have any theories, but I will look into that. In general, a number of albatrosses are being impacted by fisheries. So because they are very long-lived species, they're very slow to reproduce themselves. When you have a large impact or a large number of individuals are taken from populations, it can be very hard for them to rebuild themselves to previous numbers, if that makes sense. If you take a lot away, it takes them a very long time to replace those numbers. So as far as I know, one of the largest factors for decline in larger albatrosses like the wanderers is fisheries interaction or interaction with humans.
Yeah, we not so much. There was a question at the end of it. This is from Stricker. You travelled with them. Thank you for enriching my Fiordland voyage in January and my February Ross Sea adventure. Can you comment on how Dr. Emsley's research on the Adelies is progressing, the stable isotope work? We touched on that earlier.
Yes, but I can expand on that actually. And one of the things that is really important about what he's doing is he's looking at how Adelie penguins have changed their breeding locations over time. So over 45,000 years, how have they been moving around in the Ross Sea area? And how does that link to changes in the climate or ice cover? And by using that information, the historical information, we can kind of predict how they might move in the future. With future climate change, we can figure out where they might be likely to colonize, or and we can help to protect those areas. So this project is taking current information and linking together the information from the water, the phytoplankton, to the krill or prey items, to the eggshells, the females when they're foraging, and then ultimately the chicks of the year, and tying together all those pieces. So far, we have an undergraduate student who has started on the stable isotope analysis of the phytoplankton. We did get enough in those samples to be able to run 3 isotopes, so carbon, nitrogen, and sulfur. So they have started that. Also, they've been able to isolate and identify and make slides of some of the endemic diatoms from the Ross Sea area. So that's super exciting as well. And I'm not sure if I have Jay's information, but I will try to keep her in the loop on what we're finding. So one of our volunteers, yeah.
And quite a privilege to be part of, I should think. So we have Fran Solly back, and I think it sounds like you have another volunteer. If you are on board this February, which you are, I will be the person right alongside you.
That sounds perfect.
And then Jay has also come back and said that They really enjoyed trying to find the samples with you at Cape Royds, Adelie Connolly, and thoroughly recommend this experience to anyone that might be thinking about joining. Jennifer Crane is joining us in February, and she is so excited and will be looking to help you out as well.
Oh, this is awesome. I'm so excited.
You've got an army of volunteers already.
Yes, I know. And so I was going to say, just for people who might be thinking about joining, you know, just to bring your spirit of adventure, because expedition travel is, you really let your surroundings kind of make your schedule for you. And, you know, don't forget to look outside and go to the bridge and see where you are and find us and ask us questions. It's such an incredible expedition team that we have, and so much knowledge. It's just, yeah, it's exciting.
It is, it's exciting and it's amazing, and it's also, it's all happening in this realm of 24 hours of daylight. So you could find yourself at a penguin colony at 2 o'clock in the morning, and there's, you know, when you're there, there's no other place in the world you'd rather be.
That's right. You just have to get on with the program and remember your warm base layers.
Exactly. Thank you for that advice. And just a final message here, Lynn Foster, fascinating Kate, so proud of you. And then Mary Clayton Pierce, Enderby, thank you from Seattle.
Nice. So, so excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lynn.
And thank you, Kate, so much for joining us today. It's been a privilege having you talk to us today, but also joining us again in January and February. We have both those departures that Kate will be on, the 9 January and the 4th of February. We also have our Sweet Deals promotion till the end of this month, which means you can get 15% off a Worsley suite or 20% off a Heritage suite if you were looking to travel in. So wonderful. Thank you so much, Kate. And we look forward to seeing you in January when you're back on board.
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, we'll catch you later.
All right, bye.
Bye.